Welcome, everybody. Justin and Kevin here from the Partner Cloud team, here to talk to you about your favorite topic, PRM, Partner Revenue Measurement. And we're going to be talking about best practices today. Like, we're past that July 31st deadline. That part's behind us. We kind of had our mindset originally on, so how do we get to that minimum compliance bar, get off the naughty list, if you will, by July 31st. Most of you guys have done that. We're kind of on to phase two, which is shifting our brain from compliance into operational excellence. So we've spent the last several months talking to hundreds, literally hundreds of you here in the AWS partner ecosystem. In today's session, we're going to focus specifically really on kind of your SI/consulting type partners and how to drive like PRM alignment throughout the organization and turn this into something that can actually help your business grow.
Yeah, and AWS set this up really with like a stick and a carrot here. And we've gotten past the stick where we had this deadline and funding was going to get frozen. That was July 31st. Now we're thinking about the carrot. Now it's not about avoiding the negative outcome. It's about how can I make PRM work for me? How can I let it supercharge my co-sell visibility and ultimately my co-sell results? How can I make sure that AWS really does see all of the impact that we're driving for the business? And so it's important. There's just like a little bit of a reset here as it moves from like, here's this hoop that AWS is making me jump through into, okay, now this really is becoming the one metric to rule them all when it comes to sort of the way AWS views us. And how do I make sure that I am winning the PRM game? How do I make sure that everything we do is visible to AWS? We've spoken, AWS has actually been pretty clear on this, and we've spoken to so many of you about this topic. But in general, AWS is in this re-benchmarking era right now. And as a part of that, they're looking at all of the benefits that they're providing to partners, and that's funding, and that's programs, and there's deal level stuff, there's PDM coverage, and just how much attention you get from the field in general. And so right now, there is work to do, but I think AWS has made it pretty clear that this work will matter. This is not just sort of administrative overhead for the sake of administrative overhead. This is going to be the lens through which AWS views you.
Yeah, and to really just drive that point home, you can also kind of future cast a little bit with just a tiny bit of imagination, the many ways that this PRM value could be used to gate any number of programs in the future, or any really sort of partner benefits that you want to have access today that you don't, or do have access today that you want to keep. Those could all be gated by PRM in a future state.
Yeah. And so one thing to keep in mind, we're going to talk about sort of catch-up tagging in a second, getting to the coverage that we need from a PRM standpoint. But it's important to keep in mind that like this isn't retroactive. You're basically like, you're tagging a resource and you are starting the meter. So as we're thinking about how we maximize visibility with PRM, and just as a very, very quick reminder, you're all PRM compliant now, but I know you got a million things going on. Just for our mental model, PRM is a sticker that you put on a specific AWS resource that says, I, an AWS partner, am responsible for deploying, managing, touching this resource. And so the consumption driven by this resource should be attributed back to me. So when you put that tag on the resource, it isn't retroactive. And as AWS is actively doing this benchmarking right now into the end of the year, they've talked about sort of a January re-benchmarking sort of milestone. It's really, really important to remember that like there's a huge incentive for you to tag right now and not to wait, because not only, especially from a consulting standpoint, might you lose access to a resource that would be very easy for you to tag today that will be more difficult later. You want to start that meter as soon as possible. So just to sort of like level set, like where we're at in the journey, PRM compliance, this is where we're at. Now we're talking about PRM at scale. And so there are these sort of sub milestones inside of phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. Inside of PRM at scale, we're going to talk about alignment and the type of alignment that is required. We're going to talk about maximum tagging. We sort of just have alluded to that. And then PRM in action, we're going to talk about product code strategy. We're going to talk about the legal folks you need to get on board, the sales folks you need to get on board, how we make this repeatable from a delivery standpoint, and what does it mean to weave the sort of visibility and measurement and sort of your own sort of dashboarding that you're doing on the Alliance side. Like, hey, how are we doing with PRM, and what metrics am I looking at and when am I looking at? How to mechanize that rhythm of the business will be the final step. So let's talk about tagging. Justin, you want to sort of walk us through this tagging piece?
Yeah, exactly. So you guys will know how to tag because we've already done that with you already, right? So and if you're not the right person, if you need to kind of tag team in your technical team, this would be a good time to do that. But basically, yeah, double tag puns. Hey, here we go.
Tag team.
But basically, the idea here, as Kevin mentioned, is to slap this tag on all the resources that you're managing inside all of the customer accounts that you're engaging with. So today's session, we're specifically talking about SIs/consulting partners. The way most of you guys work is you do professional services engagements for a variety of customers. Let's just call it 100 customers. And the workloads or the AWS infrastructure that sort of you're working on and standing up exists in those 100 different AWS accounts that belong and are owned by the customer, right? So how do you go about getting your tag in place in 100 different places? There's really not an easy button necessarily, but there are some automated tools to make it a little bit easier for you. Specifically, if your team is deploying via IAC, which is infrastructure as code, that means that you're standing up new AWS infrastructure via Terraform, CloudFormation, etc. You can basically just insert your product code into those tags. Of course, this is all available in documentation. We've probably already sent you through your action plan, but the AWS docs on automated tagging, automated resource tagging are really great as well. So basically, you're going to want to go into each of those accounts where you still have access and still have the ability to tag. Make sure your customer is okay with you putting those tags. Obviously, keep in mind that these accounts, these AWS accounts, owned by the customer, right? They have final say so as to which tags persist or do not, or should be put there in the first place. But you add those tags either manually or via an IAC template or via bulk features such as tag editor. There's a lot of different ways to go do it, but you go account by account by account, make sure you have a good inventory of what types of AWS resources, which stacks in that environment belong to you and your partnership and represent the solutions that you're transacting. One common thing we get questions about are, hey, Justin, do I need to have transacted this solution on Marketplace to be able to tag it? The answer to that is resoundingly no. It does not have to reflect a Marketplace transaction. Rather, Marketplace is simply the tool where we're getting our product code from. That's the unique identifier, to use Kevin's analogy, that unique sticker that lets AWS know that that resource belongs to you and your partnership wouldn't be there without you, right? So with that, you're going into all the accounts, tagging as much as you can. And this is about going into every AWS account where you still have active relationships or active access to be able to go out and put those tags. We're not going and trying to call up the customer that we helped 5 years ago, account's been closed for a long time, but anyone where we still have active relationships. It's a great opportunity for us to get basically credit for those workloads in perpetuity as long as they remain active that reflect the value of our AWS partnership.
Yeah, thank you. And I don't want to leave this slide without emphasizing this right here, above anything else we're going to talk about today, is the most important thing to do as quickly as you can, because like we just mentioned, this is what starts the meter running. And so there's the top two categories here, either workloads that live in your account or workloads that live in an account that you have access to because customers given you access to it because you're writing to it and developing within it. Those are the easiest places to start. There's also, category 3, if you have a warm relationship, even though you don't have access anymore, but it is stuff that you built or an account in which you probably will build again in the future. You can ask for them to tag on the resources that you are responsible for standing up. But it's also important too, if you encounter friction, either for regulatory reasons or for customer consent reasons, it is important, I would say, as a best practice, to document those customer names. AWS hasn't yet released any sort of formal or mechanized process for remediation of PRM tagging that partners are unable to do. But given that this will be a relatively common problem, and like Justin said, we've talked to hundreds and hundreds of SIs, this is going to be a common problem. And so there will be some form of either informal or an actual mechanized process for this remediation. And it'll be important that you have documentation there. So here's a few just things to keep in mind. We talked about a few of these already, but every resource can only have one of these product code tags on it. And so in general, sort of last right wins, just something to keep in mind. If the customer owns these accounts, like they obviously have the right and the permissions to remove tags. There's no real benefit to you in tagging zero cost resources. Justin mentioned the IAC, how important it is to update the template itself, so that when if stuff gets rewritten, we're not accidentally rewriting over the codes themselves. And then AWS has sort of released the regions and the types of workloads that are and aren't taggable. So Justin, anything else here before we move on to the alignment we want to drive between the different teams?
Yeah, I kind of want to hit point one again, because this is a very common question we've been asked a lot of times, which is that what happens if I'm working in an account and another partner is working in the account? And maybe, one is kind of like the builder layer and one is the MSP layer or something kind of along those lines. Maybe there's a reseller in the account, whatever. The resource should be tagged to the partner most responsible for provisioning that resource into the account and essentially building and contributing net new AWS consumption. So use that as a bit of a guiding principle. But also keep in mind that the way that tagging works, only one key is allowed per resource, or one key value pair is allowed per resource. So when you type in AWS APN ID as your tag key, there can only be one value that goes with that. There can be multiple tags on a particular resource, but that one key can only be corresponding to one value, meaning only one partner, frankly, gets credit there. But so just kind of keep that in mind. This is a bit of a known issue. Like, of course, not multiple partners can't get credit for the same EC2 instance. So keep that in mind. You could run into that issue in the future, but overall kind of use like this, the simplest sort of decision tree possible, which is who's responsible for getting it into the account.
Yeah, totally agree. Thanks, Justin. The next thing to sort of keep in mind here is you already did some level of alignment, right? Like you needed some level of alignment at the executive level and at the delivery level. You needed some executive to sign off on kind of the why, and you needed someone technical to help to get you to compliance at the very least. But as we think about sort of scaling this and mechanizing it so that it just becomes a part of your rhythm of both from a sales and procurement perspective, but more importantly from a delivery perspective, we need to make sure everyone really understands why we're doing this, why it's important, so that as the urgency of this could fade because we're talking about it less because you've got people like us in your ear less about it. Everybody really understands from a durable way that this is important. So let's talk about the different teams and the sort of alignment that we want to drive there. I think it's important in general. The executive team really, really understands the why. And we already covered a lot of this why early, and so I don't want to reiterate. You can see in the bullets there, but PRM really matters, and therefore we need to change some of our messaging and some of our processes to make sure that we're maximizing around PRM. In the playbook document, which we sort of accompanies this video, in which we're emailing out to all the partners that we supported. We've also put some messaging templates together for you that you could send to the executive team, to the delivery team, legal team, sales team, etc. and to customers as well. But you can see sort of the bullets on the executive side of sort of what's important from an alignment perspective. On the delivery side, there's sort of the best practices that we hit earlier are going to be a part of what they need to get aligned around, both in terms of the urgency of tagging as soon as possible, and the sort of IAC or sort of repeatable mechanisms that will be required to make sure that as new customers are brought on and as new workloads and resources are provisioned, that we're tagging by default. And then the last couple categories, legal and sales. On the legal side, we recommend that you start to think about updating your MSAs and your SOWs. And we're not going to step in any legal landmines and tell you exactly what to say. Justin and I are not lawyers. But again, in the playbook document that we're sending your way, there are sort of some bullet points to send to your legal team, because our general MO would be, hey, if we're going to have any sort of a discussion about why this matters, it's way better to have it in the redlining process as a part of procurement when you're already talking about a whole bunch of other requirements and T's and C's than having it be mid-flight, mid-project. Either it's a disruption or you're so pot committed to the project, they're saying no and you've lost all your leverage, whatever it might be. It's like, let's just front load these conversations and standardize them in that context. And then on the sales side, we've also equipped you in that playbook with some sort of common FAQs that the sales folks will need to be able to answer, and the messaging to make sure we're all singing from the same song sheet there. Justin, anything you'd add here?
Yeah, I kind of want to talk about the fact, like we mentioned, kind of like not losing your negotiating power and the importance of considering this to be a trade-off. Keep in mind, nothing's requiring that you must tag every single workload and every single piece of AWS infrastructure with every single customer engagement. In fact, many times you will not be able to. So just kind of keep in mind, like, there is a trade-off at play here. If you get into like too sticky of a situation, you're going to lose a deal over whether or not you can apply resource tags into an account. Then I would simply choose to not do PRM for that particular account. The goal with PRM is to put as many points on the scoreboard as possible. And points here are AWS revenue dollars, right? So that's still our overarching goal. But first and foremost, you have a business to run, right? So make sure that you're not like acting in a way that disadvantages your business in an effort to become more PRM operationally compliant and excellent. After all, like, your customer comes first, do what's best for your customer. And if you can just so happen to tag that, it's in everyone's best interest.
Totally agree. Justin, let's talk about on the sort of in this delivery category, the alignment around delivery. There's a question and sort of a discussion that I know we got into the weeds with a ton of our partners around product codes and how many marketplace listings, and should I have, actually, if you think about it, there's like 30 different things we do. So really, should I have 30 different marketplace listings? Can you help sort of talk us through the guiding principles here? I know it's not one size fits all, but I do think there are some guardrails that would be helpful for everybody.
Yeah, because we meet a lot of partners who have massive marketplace presences and basically use it as a storefront for all the different professional service engagement types that they do, which is great. And it's a great way to go to market. And to be completely honest, it ranks really highly on Google and search engines, right? So it's a great, it can be a great window storefront for you. So, but does that mean that you have to use all of those listings for PRM compliance sake? You do not, right? So we recommend fewer is better when it comes to product codes. Currently, today, August 2026, there are no prizes for using tons and tons of product code and making sure that as granularly as possible that you're attributing all the correct revenue to all the correct listings that match your relevant marketplace solutions. Rather, what matters is how much PRM you're able to showcase for your entire partnership, not for specific AWS marketplace listings, specifically for SIs and consulting partners, right? So I'm totally fine with partners who want to kind of create like a generic professional services listing. You could even keep that in limited status. It doesn't have to be publicly visible and published out to the AWS marketplace. Doesn't have to be that at all. It can sit limited, which means it's only visible to you, the partner, and AWS. And use that product code for a matter of measuring your partnership value. That's totally fine. For some of you, you actually probably want a little bit more granularity in your reporting. So what we've typically done is say, hey, large SI, take this large menu of service options you have, and let's condense them down to like your top 5 list and try to make them non-concentric circles, non-overlapping circles as much as possible. So that it creates a roughly exhaustive list of the service categories. Like maybe you have a generic AI solution, a generic migration solution, a generic, modernization solution, whatever it may be. You cover it with the 5 sort of like biggest items, because ultimately here's what's going to happen. Your delivery team is going to have a new opportunity to work with a new customer on a new engagement. Great. That's what we want to have happen. Then it's going to come time for them to use their IAC template to provision resources. And they're going to get stuck on saying, which product code do I need to use for this engagement? And it may not be perfectly clear if you don't have like a really handy sort of decision guide on how to triage that decision. So I recommend fewer categories so that it's really intuitive and that your delivery team doesn't get stuck. You never want that part to get slowed down. You never want PRM in general to slow you down from doing your job. The whole idea is that investing a little bit of time in PRM can reap downstream benefits for you and your partnership. Don't let it slow down your delivery. Simplify the decision tree as much as possible.
Yeah. In general, there's a little bit of a tension between ease and granularity. And I think right now, if you're going to err on one side, let's err on the side of ease. Down the road, as PRM develops, as actually our incentives for increasing granularity might change as partners, then we can adjust midstream. But for now, let's make sure that everything gets tagged. All right, last thing to go over here is sort of the rhythm of the business. And so, Justin, you want to walk us through like on the alliance manager side, for example, someone who's got their eye on these metrics, like what should they be checking? How often? Why does day 18 matter?
Yeah, good question. So first of all, if you're not already familiar with the attributed revenue dashboard inside Partner Central, log into Partner Central, see the left-hand menu. You'll see a tab that says Partner Analytics with a drop-down. Under that, you'll see a page called Attributed Revenue. This is where we want to live. About once a month, we want to come to this page and revisit and make sure that our numbers continue to increase. And the reason the 18th is important is because AWS is going to run monthly syncs on the amount of revenue that your product codes have been attributed to. And so you're always going to be able to look back 1 month prior. And the current guidance from AWS is that on the 17th of the month, you'll get access to the reports from the month prior. So for example, it's August the 19th today as we record this video, which means that 2 days ago, August the 17th, the July PRM numbers were published. So you'd have access to see how much revenue your product code is attached to from the billing period of July 1st to July 31st. And that July billing period is made available on August 17th. So if you go in on the 18th of each month, you'll always see the month prior. And that's a great opportunity for you to kind of come face to face with the total PRM volume that you're seeing. You should always expect to see gradual increases or steep increases, depending on how aggressive you've been in the previous month in your tagging. And if you see any dips or wanes or something looks out of the ordinary, it could be a great trigger for you to go say, I wonder what happened with our product codes that we're seeing a dip in volume this month. Perhaps a customer untagged your resources. Perhaps another partner came in and tagged their product code instead. Maybe you launched a bunch of new projects that you expected to see attribution for this month, and they're not populating for some reason. It's just a great time to just like put the 30 minutes on a calendar, see if the data leads you in specific directions so that you can make sure that, like, especially early, these first several months, post-compliance deadline as we sort of round out 2026. Use the rest of this year to get that muscle memory built up on checking in on your PRM values and making sure that you're seeing the growth that you'd project.
Yeah, that's great. And then as you can see here, there are things like if you see zeros to start, that's normal, that's okay. There's just an anonymity threshold that you haven't crossed yet, where AWS is very careful about not accidentally sharing customer usage data in a way that you could reverse engineer. So there's things like that you need to not be super concerned about, as long as you can see rows in that initial table that's on top of that attributed revenue dashboard. You're compliant. Even if it says zero, that just means you don't have the data that you need quite yet. Last thing. Go ahead, Justin.
I was going to say, Kevin, you know what I would do here is like, if I were an alliance lead, I'd pull up my pipeline from the previous month and say, all right, last month we closed these 4 deals, and I know that they're already working in delivery right now on these 4 deals. And I should expect to see these 4 deals starting to populate in our attributed revenue dashboard. And I want to make sure, like, maybe it's a good time for me to just like fire off a quick Slack to the 4 different delivery leads who are leading those projects, or the 1 delivery lead, or however your system works, and say, hey, just quick reminder, do we have PRM tags on that project? Do we have PRM tags on the other project? Go through that, make sure that you're building a little bit of organizational muscle memory around making sure that every new deal that comes through is getting tagged with AWS resource tags.
Yeah, for the purpose of building that muscle memory, and because the easiest time to fix something like that would be right after you still have all the access, you're still actively writing into these environments. No big deal to add a code, but it would be such a bummer to complete a project, hand it over, lose access to the customer account, and now all of a sudden, just because we forgot, we're never going to get your PRM credit for the work that we did. So just to wrap up here, Justin and I have provided, and our team have provided PRM support to hundreds of you, and anybody who's getting the guide from us. We very directly we're a part of your journey. We'd like to continue being a part of your journey, not just in compliance, but in ensuring that you are getting the most out of this. So here's a few things that you can see here that we've done with other partners, like helping think through not just compliance, but getting beyond compliance. If you want to reach out to us, there's the email there. There's a link in the playbook document, which you should have in your inbox as well. And just in general, with so many of these PRM engagements, it's also graduated into a larger engagement where Justin and I and our team are able to help you think through what it means to optimize your wider co-sell relationship with AWS, whether it comes to sort of mechanizing your sort of opportunity hygiene through CRM integrations and MCP to leverage partner central agents, whether it's our sort of hands-on partner coaching advisory that we do, where we sort of function as like an embedded member of your team or as a de facto alliance manager on your behalf. There's a lot we can do and a lot we'd love to do. Please feel free to reach out at any time. Just keep in mind, on the PRM side, there's a clock. We're funded by AWS to support you in this process, but our ability to support you in a way that's funded by AWS expires. Like, AWS incents us to help you and incents you to move quickly via that support, because they want you to move quickly and get up to speed. But in 6 months, if you want PRM support, it might just be a little bit of a different conversation. So take advantage of this while it's available to you, and while it's available to you at no cost.
Yeah. So with that, guys, really want to thank everyone for taking the time to spend some time with us. It's been great working with each of you so far on your PRM journey. I'm glad to get so many of you across the starting line, really. And now we're kind of mid-race, and we look forward to taking this engagement to the next step.